Welcome back to the Hardware Unbox podcast for episode 32. Steve's with me here to talk about, well, just some topics from the last couple of weeks, considering we didn't do a podcast. So we've got the Asus RMA situation from the Gamers Nexus coverage. We talk about our thoughts there, and also some of the challenges that we face in Australia and how that's different to what you might see in other countries. We provide some updates on the Intel Power Spec situation as well. So the updates there from testing and various different things that Intel has been saying lately. I've got a story about how Google Drive screwed me over and screwed Balin, our video editor, over, and how I'm unimpressed with them. And that's about it for this one. So yeah, hope you all enjoy it. Let's get into it. All right, Steve. Well, I guess I should probably explain why we haven't done a podcast for the last couple of weeks, because I think directly after saying that we would not miss any until Computex, we then went and not did a podcast for a couple of weeks. So yeah, sorry,
2 in a row.
Sorry to everyone about that. Yeah, 2 in a row. So what happened? The first week, I was a little sick, took the week off, which was nice and refreshing, actually. That was good. Good for my mental health and physical health. And then the second week, there was just a few scheduling issues there, trying to slot in the podcast. Didn't really happen. There's nothing much to talk about, so we thought we'll just pause on that one and put it in the next week. So I guess it's kind of mostly my fault this time, but also I'm not absolving you of the blame either.
That's fair. You kind of got me off the hook because the week you were sick, I wasn't feeling 100%. And I just had like an ongoing headache that I couldn't shake. You know, one of those like really in the front there. Well, you know,
yeah, not great.
Certainly not migraine level, but just this dull ache. I had no other symptoms, but I haven't had headaches for quite a while. It was like I had a hangover almost. So anyway, that lasted all week and sort of into the next week. And then I realized at that point we had a virus because my wife got it. Both of the kids aren't feeling good. So I don't know whose fault it is, where it came from. We won't lay blame on any individual. But yeah, the week you didn't want to do it, I wasn't super keen. And then the week after, the days didn't line up that well. And then the day when you wanted to do it, my head was pounding, which actually happened to be the last day I had it. So it was about a 2-week period. Poor old Balin's got it now. So he came back from his holiday. And I reckon he spent a couple of days with me just as I was coming good. So he might have got it from my wife or something, I don't know, or one of the kids. So Balin's editing your video at the moment with a thumping big headache. I told him to go home, but, you know, he's a warrior. He's like, no, I can do it. So good on Balin.
Oh, sounds a little brutal. Hopefully he gets all right in the next couple of days. We'll see how that goes.
It's one of those things, though, and he's got a point. Like, it's an annoying headache. It makes it a bit hard to focus. It's uncomfortable. You don't really want to be existing at that point, but it's like, what do you do? Like, you can go home and just sit there and achieve nothing and have a headache, or you can just try and push on, which is what I did. I made a couple of videos, did some testing, and just tried to be productive and not waste all of that time. So it's a bit miserable, but at least, yeah, you get something done.
I feel like that's just currently what's going around in Australia at the moment, especially in our area. Just sickness after sickness. Everyone I know is sick, family's sick, your family's sick. So well, that's what happens at this time.
Yeah, since the C word, it seems like everyone's, and a different C word, not the Australian one, it seems like everyone's just been sick nonstop since that sort of lockdown period. So I don't know if there's in any way linked or if it's just a very coincidental bad run of health for the last few years. But prior to the C word, I almost never got sick. Like, why did YouTube?
You can't keep saying the C word, because every time you say it, I'm like, no, it's not that.
I may be doing it deliberately. But yeah, before COVID, I just never got sick. Like, how many we were pumping out a video nearly every day for 5 years, and I didn't take a day off. Yeah, I mean, I know when you've got young kids and stuff that you're more likely to get sick. So that's certainly been a problem. So I don't know how much of it's that. Anyway, don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I honestly have no information for you, no idea. But I have been more sick in the last 2 years than I have probably my entire life combined. In fact, that's not an exaggeration. I'm quite confident that's the case.
I'm just assuming that by staying inside for a couple of years that my immune system is withered away.
Has to be, right?
It's completely useless. Something like that from my complete lack of medical understanding of how those things work. I'll blame that because if it's my fault and it's actually because I haven't been eating healthily or taken vitamins or something, I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to blame myself. Well, if there's something else I can blame, that's better. So I'll blame that.
To be fair, I definitely don't exercise as much as I should or would like to. but over the last 2 years, I've been eating very healthy, like the healthiest I've eaten. So
A lot of salads.
either I'm not eating enough junk food, and that's the problem, because I've eliminated sugar from my diet largely, and Balin can back me up on this. I'm not speaking crap. It's true, isn't it, Balin?
It is very true.
Yeah, he said it's very true. So for those of you that are not hearing Balin 10 meters away from the microphone, I eat healthy, barely eat junk food, don't drink sugar water or anything like that. And I'm getting...
You need to smash that stuff, maybe. Get on those full sugar Cokes.
Maybe that's the answer. Maybe there was the secret sugar mix. I'm not sure. Anyway, we should probably move on.
Let's move on. Let's talk about my annoying Google Drive story. Because
okay. I haven't heard this.
This has annoyed me. Balin, who's our video editor, would know about this because I've been talking to him about it. So
I have
basically...
So I was going to say, I have heard him swearing about Google Drive stuff in relation to you, and I wasn't sure if he was swearing at Google Drive or you or both. But anyway, I'm interested to hear what he has been swearing about. So go on, please.
It's probably related to Google.
Right.
So as some people know, Balin, our video editor, he does edit some of my videos. He's currently working on a monitor review of mine, apparently. And, well, I've got to send some footage to him somehow. So back when we were trying to get Balin to edit some videos, I looked at a number of different solutions to deliver quite large project files, hundreds of gigabytes, to Balin in the most easy, fast method. So I was looking for things like the speed of uploading and downloading on both of our ends. I was looking at things like how much storage capacity have we got, what's the pricing on those sort of things, and also the ease of synchronizing files so that if I send files, then they're automatically downloaded on Balin's PC. He doesn't have to do anything specifically, click to download or anything. It's all automated. So especially if I'm like uploading files at night, by the time he gets in the next morning, if he's left his computer on, the footage would be there ready to go for editing. And I looked at, I don't know, probably about a dozen different ways of doing this, whether that was like local hosting or using various different cloud services or all sorts of different things. And in the end, the best solution from performance, from cost, storage capacity, all those factors turned out to be Google Drive, which I happen to already have, which was kind of a nice little bonus there as a subscriber to the Google ecosystem sort of things. But it was nice that, Google had a quite reliable, at least I thought, solution for this. So I go about sending him footage, sending him hundreds of gigabytes of files for this over a large period of time. And one day I noticed, whenever Balin deletes the footage from our synchronized folder on his end, it would delete the files on my PC, re-download them, then delete them again. And if I did this on my PC, Balin's computer would start downloading the files again for no reason. Now, I would have thought, being a sensible, logical person, that when I hit delete on my computer, it would just delete the files in the cloud and on Balin's computer, right? No need to re-download the files. That makes absolutely no sense, is a complete waste of bandwidth, is stupid. But I found this bug. So I thought, clearly this is a bug, right? Clearly I found an issue with Google Drive where there's some problem with the synchronization aspect. And if I even go into Google Drive on the website and I click download, it would delete and then re-download on both of our computers, which is just even more egregious waste of bandwidth. So I thought, I'll file a ticket with Google.
Mm-hmm.
I sent them detailed information, all the sorts of specs and things and configurations. I sent them a video showing exactly what was happening, where I'd click delete. The Google Drive little desktop application would show the files being downloaded. I had Task Manager open, showing that I was actually getting network usage at that time. So it wasn't just Google Drive, falsely telling me things were downloading. It was actually downloading, and both of us had noticed this anyway because your internet connection gets a bit slow when you start downloading stuff for no reason.
Hundreds of gigs.
Send them all this stuff, back and forward emails. They asked for a bit of clarification, few things, blah, blah, blah. It eventually gets to this point after weeks of back and forth where they're like, so this is intentional behavior. What's actually happening is good for you because this is how we know that files are being synchronized properly. And so I sent them back an email being like, what? I'm like, I've explained why it's not good and what you should be doing and why downloading all these files for no reason, makes absolutely no sense and is wasting my bandwidth and effort and time and stuff. And they're like, no, 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 no. No, no, no. What's actually happening is it's just an indication of the download happening. It's not actually re-downloading the files. I'm like, no, no, it is. I've shown you originally in this video that it's definitely re-downloading the files. And like, no, 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 no. Intentional, expected behavior.
Sounds like
This is how
Intel.
file synchronizing works. I'm like, no, this is a bug. Like, you need to tell the engineers or whoever. Yeah, obviously, I'm not expecting much to happen here because they have. I'm just one client of theirs for Google services. They have, so it's a big company that has lots of things happening. But I thought maybe they'd at least pass on the information about this specific issue. Because, if you're downloading like a gigabyte of files and you delete them and then it has to re-download a gig, it's like, whatever. It doesn't make too much difference. You can wear that. If you're using it for hundreds of gigabytes, which, now to be clear, Google allows you to do. I've never been banned from Google for doing this. Clearly, there's no limitations for bandwidth in these scenarios. I would have thought this is a clear reason you would use a feature like Google Drive, sharing files, synchronizing them between computers. This is all stuff that they provide as a service.
It's cloud-based storage that you're paying for, so certainly.
Yeah. I'm paying good money for this service every month or however much because I obviously have to have quite a bit of storage to do this. And anyway, I was just really, really frustrated and annoyed with their response where basically after all this, like, they clearly originally thought it was some sort of bug because I had to go back and forth with them multiple times about exactly what the problem was and explaining it and explaining how it affected our workflow and stuff. For them to come back and then say, no, that's not a bug, it's intentional. Pretty frustrating. So I don't know whether I'll switch away from Google Drive to some other solution or figure out something else, but it's a pretty dumb system that was really frustrating me because I just got back some of these responses this week from them where it's, after a bit of back and forth, it's finally, at least I think, finalized to the not our problem solution. Mm-hmm. So, very dissatisfied about that.
Yeah, well, why call it a bug when you can call it a feature? That seems to be what they're doing.
But, very surprising.
You would also think it would be something that they would want to address because they're... in your case, potentially transferring hundreds of gigabytes for a single project to then delete it. It's like a Zoolander meme. It's like, oh, we need to download the files in order to delete them. It's like, what?
It's clear that Google has the ability to delete the files because it deletes them before re-downloading them. Mm-hmm. So they know that it can be done. It's just there's obviously some weird configuration thing where if there's a change in the cloud or something, then it triggers the download to happen, even if the download is not required. And, Google Drive has this like system where files moved into the trash instead of being deleted. But even if I do delete them from the trash section, this issue still happens. So, I don't really know what's going on there to why they've specifically implemented that. I mean, if it's a feature, I think that's just a load of BS. It's clearly a bug that they need to resolve. But just their communication of things was very disappointing being a paid customer. You don't like seeing those sorts of things happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll be interested to hear how that one progresses or if you change.
I don't think there'll be any more progression, to be honest, because, I don't think they really know what they're doing. Anyway, let's move on to... Let's move on to the Asus RMA situation because we probably would have talked about this in the last couple of weeks, but haven't. Obviously, this has been brought about because of a couple of Gamers Nexus videos. There's been the initial coverage of where they tried to send in their ROG Ally device to be repaired, and then Asus tried to slug them with various different fees for things that they didn't really need to repair. And then more recently, there was a second video from Gamers Nexus talking about Asus's response to this, how Asus were claiming they were doing certain things that Gamers Nexus had showed that they weren't doing. And then, to be honest, at the end of Gamers Nexus video, I thought there was quite a good section talking for US viewers about what you can do in various different warranty and RMA situations to protect yourself. Like, what are the laws? What are the legal implications of Asus doing this and those sorts of things. So, I don't know, have you watched the videos from Gamers Nexus at this point on the Asus thing? What were your sort of thoughts on how everything went down?
Well, I agree with their videos. I thought they were good videos. The original one, obviously, they had an RMA problem. They sent it in. They tried to deflect and extort money out of the customer for what is a known problem by making up another issue. So yeah, very scammy, very dodgy there, and they got a good result in the end without having to sort of say where Gamers Nexus don't screw us over type thing. So they got there in the end. They just made them jump through hurdles, which when you're a paying customer, that's obviously not what you want to have as an RMA service. You want to pay good money for a product and then get good quality support. So if you have to send the product back and it has a known fault, at the very least, it should be okay, this is a known fault. We have an efficient procedure for swapping this out and returning your device to you as quickly as possible with as little impact to your life. So send it to us, we fix, we send back. That's really how that should go. So piss poor service from Asus there. There's not much more else to say about it. And then obviously it gets handled differently in other regions. I mean, we wouldn't even send it back to Asus, would we? If you bought it through PC Case Gear and it had a problem, whether it's a known problem or physical damage or whatever it is, you would send it to PC Case Gear and they would deal with Asus.
I think that's the case. I'm not sure whether that's also the case in other regions, because I know obviously you can at times also buy it directly from the manufacturer. So
okay.
I'm not sure whether Australia has an Asus store where you directly buy from them. But for example, I could buy a Samsung monitor from PC Case Gear or directly from the Samsung website. And I guess if the product had broken and I'd bought it through the Samsung website, I would be directly dealing with Samsung. Whereas if I bought it through the retailer, the correct way to approach it, at least in Australia, I don't know if that's different in other regions, would be to send it to the retailer who then sends it back. But I think maybe in some regions it's more of a direct process to the manufacturer where it doesn't really matter the retailer that you've bought it from, you send it directly to them. Again, not 100% sure on that one, but yes, here in Australia, most often you'd be dealing with the retailer specifically.
Yeah, that's a big incentive, at least here in Australia, to buy from a retailer, regardless of who that is, whether it's a big, traditional brick and mortar store or if it's an online store, whatever it is. But buying from a local retailer is a good way of. Generally, when I purchase, we just bought a coffee maker for the studio, for example, I could have saved a little bit of money buying it online and having it shipped out to me, but I ended up going to a large local chain and paying a little bit more money just because it was an expensive item. And if anything breaks on it or goes wrong, it's easy just to send it to them, have them deal with all of that crap, and then me pick it up. And it's the same thing with, I've bought power tools online. I've had the occasional one fail, and having to mail it back to someone and go through all that process can be annoying rather than just dropping it off at the store and saying, broken, take care of it. Here's my proof of purchase through you guys. They usually have digital accounts and things now, which makes it really easy. So I don't think we would have run into that problem if you had have bought that particular device here in Australia through a retailer. But yeah, if you had have bought it through Asus, maybe we would have the same problem. Not sure, but there's obviously very strong and easily enforceable consumer laws here, and they would swiftly bend Asus over and solve that problem for you.
Yeah, and that's really what I wanted to talk about was, obviously you brought up some good points about how what Asus did is bad and there's really no excuses for it. And it even gets to the point where you do the opposite sort of thing and you get a reputation for doing a good thing and consumers will want to continue buying from you. So there should at least be that incentive to have good after-sales support and care so that you can encourage people to buy from you again and again and again, which I think is probably not the case with Asus, hearing some of those horror stories. And I think even in the Gamers Nexus video, they had emails from all of their viewers and stuff where they'd emailed in about various Asus, issues with warranties. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit is why we don't really cover these things here in Australia and how it sort of is different for us in Australia, which makes it less likely that we would run into RMA issues. And part of it is what you've already brought up about if we send it to a retailer, most retailers are probably going to try and do a better job of dealing with you because they're a retailer that, has their reputation on the line from a selling things perspective, whereas Asus, it's like, well, you send it back to a manufacturer who knows they haven't directly sold it to you or something, then potentially there's issues there. But here in Australia as well, we have quite different consumer rights to what you would find over in America. So if you watch the end of the Gamers Nexus video, they're talking about the various different warranty acts and things in the United States. But here in Australia, for example, warranty periods really aren't a thing. So when companies, you might see like a 1 year or 2 year warranty or whatever on products, which is apparently quite enforceable in nations like the United States. In Australia, our consumer rights say that products should last for a reasonable length of time. Now, I don't know if that's the exact language used in the warranty and claim things and all those sorts of things, but I know that it's supposed to be for a reasonable amount of time. So whether it specifically states 1 or 2 years or 3 years or whatever, if you could determine in, say, a small claims court that you actually do expect a TV, for example, to last for 7 years, but you only had your warranty valid for 2 years as specified by the manufacturer could still be obligated to repair it if it breaks after 5 or 6 years, if it's determined that that product should reasonably last for that long.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the main advantages that we have here in Australia when it comes to consumer rights that makes our warranty claim process very different. It means that there's less of that concern around a product breaking after a year and then it's a year and a month after the warranty period's over. You could quite rightly claim to a company that you expected that product to last for more than a year, and they'd have to sort of prove, I guess, that the expected lifespan of the product was only a year to deny your sort of warranty claim. Otherwise, you could take it further.
Mm-hmm.
And there's additional benefits we have in Australia as well regarding how companies refund and replace products, whether they're specifically required to replace it or refund you. You know, the things like getting store credit is often not a valid response from a company in the case of major issues with products. And there's distinctions between major and minor faults as well
Mm-hmm.
that play into how warranties and things play out for us. But at least here in Australia, relative to the United States, there are many more things as a consumer that you can point to in various acts. And we've got here the ACCC, I think it's like the Consumer Protection Agency, effectively,
Mm-hmm.
that handles all of this. So when it comes to RMA issues with companies in Australia, generally speaking, relative to what we hear from other countries, companies are more willing to play ball with warranties because if they go against those sorts of policies, then they could be up for significant fines and penalties from the ACCC. So one example, Steam, the digital game marketplace everyone knows, that was penalized by the ACCC in Australia for not offering adequate game refunds. So in some countries where they might be able to get away with a 1 or 2 hour window for warranty returns effectively because you don't like the game or it's broken or something. Here in Australia, they had to basically say, well, you can refund a game for if it's broken or non-functional, let's say it's buggy, for example, for any reason because our consumer protection allows that to be the case. And I think they were slugged with some sort of fine.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that said, all of that discussion on how Australia is different, it makes it more difficult for us to talk about warranty experiences that people have in other countries. Because you hear all these disaster stories, right, of people sending stuff back, they're just ignored, or they get terrible service. And at least I feel like the times that I've had to go through retailers or deal with companies directly on most warranty processes, they've been reasonable, certainly not to the average level, I would say, from other countries. I don't know whether your experiences would be the same, but at least it feels like those protections in Australia do benefit us quite a bit when it comes to those things.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I haven't had that many PC-related components that I've had to warranty.
True.
But
yeah.
I've had a lot of other, expensive items from TVs, power tools, even, expensive machines and things like that. Where, for example, my latest Hustler lawnmower, I bought that, had it for quite a few months, and I was driving along, and these things are awesome, by the way, Kawasaki engines on them, and it just blew up. Like, it made the biggest bang, and just bang, crash, seized up, completely locked up. And I rang up the retailer that I bought it through, told them the problem. They drove a guy out the next day. They came and they had to tow the mower the whole way up my 5-acre hill to get it onto the truck. They took it away. 2 days later, it was back with a brand new engine. So I think Kawasaki had a bad batch because they took it apart, showed them photos of how it had basically self-destructed, and they sent an engine straight away on a crate. But that warranty process was for probably a warranty worth $5,000 that I'd been using for quite a few months. They didn't try and say, I used the wrong oil or, you did this wrong. They just was taken care of. It was 2 days I was without the mower for. And I've had many other examples of, items that are relatively inexpensive to extremely expensive having warranty related problems, and the companies have all looked after them really well. I mean, I guess this is where there's a bit of I don't know, lost in translation, if you will. We recommended a while ago, I think in a Q&A series, when people were asking about building yourself or pre-builts or whatever. And obviously, and we were talking about boutique pre-built systems, not like Dell or whatever, or HP.
Yeah.
And we were saying, really, it's hard to go past something like a PC case gear pre-built system, because that actually sent a few of them out to us for various different content pieces. And I was blown away by how well they were put together. Like the cable management was more than what I could personally be bothered doing for most of my systems.
Yeah.
They're very meticulous, very well put together. It works out to be maybe $150 they charge. I think I priced up about 3 different systems. So pretty small builder's fee. And then that's also configuring the software, making sure it all works, testing it thoroughly before it's sent out. So again, really competitive fee. And then if PC Case Gear mail you out a system and you set it all up, if 6 months later that system starts crashing or having problems and you can't solve it, they actually will pay to have it returned to them. And then they fix the problem and then mail it back out to you. So it's not like you're up for tons of shipping costs. So if you live in a different state, you get pretty great service there. But I think a lot of that is actually by law anyway. That's a service they have to offer. So I'm not sure how above and beyond they go there. But yeah, they do a great service in the terms of building the computer and all that. So I have to give them credit for that. But yeah, it's pretty cool that if you get that, it's not a concrete warranty. So if you buy the computer from them and it has problems, they have to pay to have quite an expensive system returned to them, solved and sent back out. So yeah, I mean, we do get pretty well looked after. There's pretty good individual, protection for Australians when buying various different products. And I don't think there's ever been an example where I've got burnt. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely read horror stories from Australians as well relating to various different.
Oh, you have to fight sometimes
processes.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, usually once you bring up the actual consumer laws here in Australia, the ACCC's got a great website you can go to where they clearly outline the rights for consumers and for companies as well, because obviously there are protections for companies as well. Usually once you point to those things, there's really nothing that they can do to legitimately deny your warranty claim. Obviously, you don't want to have to go to that stage. Companies should be doing the right thing.
That's right. Yeah.
In other countries where things aren't as clear, it's much more difficult to just point to those things and be like, hey guys, you have to do this because of laws.
Yeah, that's right. So if Asus tried what they tried to Gamers Nexus to an Australian, which look, they possibly have done plenty of times. If you take that to the ACCC and you say like they're trying to extort me for money on and provide them with all the evidence, then Asus are going to find themselves in pretty hot water there, just as other companies have, and they may have run into problems in Australia already. I'm not sure. But the point is there are laws in place to protect consumers. So as long as you understand those laws and can use them to your advantage, it's annoying that you'd have to, but at least as sort of a last resort, you have that option. Whereas in other regions, and I've helped out our Patreon members in other regions before. I've had guys that have been supporting us on Patreon and Floatplane for quite a while reach out to me. One of them was a Gigabyte motherboard. I don't recall the exact details. We're going back about 4 years, but basically he bought, I think it was a B350 or maybe, no, X370, I think it was. It was one of the original AM4 motherboards. He bought a Gigabyte one. It had I think the onboard audio or something died. It was something fairly minor, but obviously when you buy a board, you want it to work. So he sent it through the RMA process for his region, and they sent him back a board that was like filthy. It was the same model board, but it had like dirt and stuff on it. It was pretty crazy, the condition of the board they sent out. And it was all scratched and stuff on the heat sinks. It looked awful. And he got into a fight with Gigabyte over that, and they weren't willing to do anything about it until I stepped in and said, guys, what's going on here? And I didn't really have time to investigate the RMA process of another region, and it's not really what we do. And I didn't know if this was just, you don't know if it's a one-off, like they've got onto someone who doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't, I don't know, they're doing their job poorly. Anyway, I got our Gigabyte Australia team involved, and they got the board replaced for him. And I've had to do it with MSI as well. So I guess one of the details that probably shouldn't be overlooked in this is that these companies are only as good as your consumer laws. If they can take an inch, they'll take it. They'll take whatever they can take, is I guess my point.
Yep.
If MSI can screw you over, MSI is sponsoring some Computex, they probably won't be saying this, but history has shown MSI will screw you over. There's not too many good guys in this game. There's not too many. There are companies you can point to that have a reputation for being good guys. Unfortunately, they're not MSI, they're not ASRock, they're not Asus, and they're not Gigabyte. So that sucks. If you want to buy a motherboard or whatever, that sucks. I've heard companies like EVGA, they operated a tight ship in the US and were really good. Unfortunately, they don't exist anymore, but I used to hear good things about them all the time. So there are certainly companies out there that care about their reputation and try to look after their customers and treat their customers as they should. It's been brought up quite a lot these days that you pretty much get treated like crap by a lot of these companies as a customer, like you're an inconvenience for buying their product, which is just piss poor conduct, and that really does need to change. It's really disappointing to see. So it's great when you do purchase a service or a product from a company that appreciates you giving them your time, money, whatever it is. That's really how it should go, rather than, oh, you inconveniently gave us money for that thing that we don't want to support. Just go away. Like, give us your money, go away. And that's the attitude of a lot of these companies. So whenever we do see this from any of these companies or bad products or whatever, we go after them. But I feel like our job, or at least the job that we've given ourselves, is going after them for the quality of their products, not necessarily how they support them. Because as you said, it's just a minefield. It depends on so many other things. Really, it's on your government to protect you from these companies.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for us in Australia relative to a Gamers Nexus to investigate, let's say, problems with the US warranty process. Like, he got a lawyer on from the US that was familiar with US consumer rights and laws and things. He could, demonstrate the problems with the warranty process because he had problems with the warranty process. And as he pointed out in some of that content as well, the amount of emails that they were getting at Gamers Nexus about Asus warranties, even that doesn't at times justify making content about it. It's only once you can have that clear, you can demonstrate from the very start to the very end of the process what's gone wrong, that you can, I guess, prove that there were issues with it. Whereas, as you say, like, if you're just getting lots and lots of user reports, those are useful and good to know, but there's so many different things that could be happening like, what's the region like? What are the laws like in the region? Where are those reports coming from? What's the processes in place? And do they differ from country to country? Like, if I have an issue here in Australia, does that mean that people are having an issue in the US or vice versa? I think that, for some companies, certainly there's probably going to be a culture of dealing with warranties in a less ideal way that's probably going to spread across most regions if that's sort of how they're handling it in some regions. But again, it's one of those things where people want us to comment on warranties and support in reviews, where it's like, well, I don't know really how to even approach that in a way that properly and accurately determines how the warranty process is going to go for the average consumer, outside of being able to tell you my personal experience. Like, if what happened to Gamers Nexus happened to me, absolutely, there would be a video about it, 100%. That's not going to be getting swept under the carpet in any stretch of the meaning. But yeah, like, to talk about just generically which companies are better because of warranties and things, I think you should just probably assume that all the companies are trying to screw you over with these processes. And as you said, like, laws of your country are the things that are going to protect you the most. And really, if you're in a country we've sort of described what the consumer laws are like here in Australia, but if you live somewhere else, Europe, New Zealand, America, Canada, wherever, look into your consumer laws and your consumer rights so that you're very familiar with what the laws in your region say, which is going to give you the best ammunition to use against companies if they do try and screw you over. So in addition to things like documenting what's happening to your products as you're sending them back for RMAs, making sure that you're trying to get as much of their communications on record as possible, so via email and things like that. But in addition to that, if you're very familiar with what is allowed in your country and not, then that's going to give you the best position possible to combat companies trying to be dodgy against you. And there's been plenty of people I've talked to in Australia who are not overly familiar with our consumer rights, even though they are very strong and believe that things like, this product died after the 2-year warranty period, therefore I have to buy a new one. It's like, no, that's potentially not the case, depending on the particular product and category that it might be in. So yeah, that's sort of how I would be looking into this. But, hopefully companies, when they get blasted like this, and Asus have been blasted twice on this because Gamers Nexus blasted them before Computex last year as well. They need to lift their game because, consumers are not tolerating this stuff, I guess.
Yeah, look, again, all of them need to lift their game. MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, ASRock. I know all of them have done similar things to this and are still doing similar things to this in certain regions. They all need to really do better. They need to support the products they're selling. I think the reason why these 4 companies, or at least in particular Gigabyte, MSI, and Asus, have these problems is because they pump out products faster than I can possibly keep track of. Like, I feel like every day they've got a new something: case, power supply, cooler, maybe a memory stick, SSD, handheld gaming device. The list goes on, right?
There's probably about 200 motherboards that they're currently supporting.
Yeah. So they're just crapping out products left, right, and center. And basically it's difficult to support all of them properly. Whereas I guess the companies that you do see offering good warranty, good support are really specialists, like an EVGA, at least if we look at the PC scene. And it's a bit easier just to keep track of their products and their inventory and all that sort of stuff. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just pointing out a logistics hurdle they have of crapping out so many bloody products that, So
you lose focus a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's what's happening here. They're tripping over themselves to release new products, and they're not properly supporting the ones they have. And of course, there's a million other things that are at play as well, like profit margins and trying not to spend money on supporting their customers that they should be supporting, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, but 100% agree. It's not a good situation. I think this segment does need a bit of a summary that we can say we liked the Gamers Nexus video. Gamers Nexus did excellent reporting on this video. It is a massive problem. We agree that it was very scammy and underhanded, and Asus should definitely be slapped in the face for it, and we definitely think they need to improve things. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer because the amount of people that got upset with your take on the GN EK thing was unbelievable. The amount of people that walked away from that thinking that you were dismissing what GN did and you were sort of sweeping on the rug, and you were saying that any abuse or misconduct or anything like that happened allegedly from EK was okay because you weren't interested in it. Like, your point was just straight over their heads. Like, you were just saying that this is a problem, it needs to be addressed, and someone needs to expose it. It's just that it's not a thing that you're necessarily interested in watching or being a part of. I mean, I think you did explain that quite clearly. But
well, yeah. And, people want things to be caught up in the drama, right? There's always that acceleration of, it's everyone piling on things. There's some things I'm personally just not as interested in other things. This scenario with Asus and the RMAs interested me more than the EK situation from a personal perspective.
Yep.
But I think the takeaway from what we would cover at Hardware Unboxed is pretty similar between the EK and Asus situations. If we don't have firsthand experiences of issues with the warranty process and external factors outside of the products, because 99 to 100% of what we cover at Hardware Unboxed is related to the products and how they perform, unless we have firsthand experience with something that affects us in some way relating to that, then there's a lot of complications relating to that coverage, and making sure that you cover it fairly, accurately, and it's applicable to a large number of people. And the Gamers Nexus investigation in both fronts was great from those perspectives because of that, the in-depth nature that they took in the EK situation. And with this Asus RMA situation, the trigger for that content to be made was their own bad experience with the process, which again, like I was describing earlier, that gives you the firsthand evidence that you can use to back up user reports. Because we do generally believe the user reports that we're sent via emails and things like that, but it's very hard to investigate them and make sure that what the users are reporting is 100% from start to finish exactly what has happened. I imagine that's the case most of the time, but when you're reporting on something and making a negative piece like that, you want to make sure that you're dotting your I's, crossing your T's, you're getting everything 100% accurate. And as I said, having that firsthand experience with Asus RMA process allowed Gamers Nexus to make that content. And again, as we explained throughout this video, the processes that we're likely to go through in Australia for those things is different and gives consumers more protection, which makes us less likely to experience issues like that. So I don't know if anyone was actually wondering why we typically don't cover those sorts of situations on the channel or mention them in reviews, really. That's hopefully more of an explanation into why we don't do it. But again...
and also, Gamers Nexus don't do it either. As you said, this was one specific incident they ran into where they personally had a problem. It's the same thing they had with Newegg, right? Like, they don't go around auditing online retailers within the US. That's not what they do at all. They happen to just purchase a motherboard from Newegg that Newegg... They had a grenade.
They screwed them over with.
They had a grenade and they dropped it at their feet. All they needed to do was not screw over Gamers Nexus, but they had shady practices, poor systems in place, bad training, and it bit them in the butt eventually. And generally those things will bite you in the butt eventually.
Same with our LG situation where they tried to manipulate our reviews through offering us, paid, I don't know what the processes were back then, but something along those lines, right? We're not going around auditing to make sure that all companies are not doing that to other creators, but it happened to us. We reported on it, and it gives you the best evidence, I guess, to report on those things in the best possible way. Obviously, some journalists, that is their main goal, is to investigate companies in that way, to really look into things when it doesn't directly impact them. But as we sort of talked about in that previous EK situation, Hardware Unboxed, our primary goal is testing products, doing all those sorts of other investigations. Gamers Nexus does a great job of them when they run into them, and there's other companies, other creators as well that do good jobs of that. So, yeah, there's no need for us to make our own RMA Asus video take on the situation because it's been covered pretty well by Gamers Nexus, and I really appreciate that coverage. So, yeah. Unless you have anything else to say about Asus, we'll move on to the next topic.
No, I just really want to stress that Tim was on board with that video. Really happy with it, guys. 2 thumbs up from Tim, and supports what Gamers Nexus are doing. All right, I think I've covered all our bases there, Tim. We can proceed with the next segment.
We'll see what the comment section say.
Hopefully there won't be any pitchforks.
Well, if there are, there are. All right, I wanted to talk about, probably to wrap up our topics for today, the Intel Power Spec situation, because that was happening back when we were last doing podcasts. I think our last podcast was our in-depth discussion into what's been going on with the motherboard front and those sorts of things. What are the latest updates? What's been happening with the Power Spec situation and other board vendors like MSI, which weren't really involved to begin with?
Right. So last time we looked at it, we didn't really know exactly what was happening. There was quite a few rumors. There was rumors of, I think it was the base spec was going to be 125 watts with a turbo period of 188 watts. And I think that may still be the baseline spec, the default spec, but for non-K-SKU parts. Not 100% sure on that. But what I have done is, because all the BIOSes are meant to be rolled out by the end of this month, aren't they? Admittedly, I haven't looked into this for about a week because we've had a ton of other things on our plate and we've got Computex coming up. And what I thought I would do is just, because this is an evolving thing and I don't want to keep making video after video that ends up being wrong or outdated because BIOSes get pulled, which has happened. The BIOSes that I tested previously have now been pulled. But the official information that we do have from Intel and has been passed on to board makers is that the extreme profile, so this is sort of the maximum potential default profile that could be loaded on a motherboard is PL1 equals PL2 at 253 watts, which is always what Intel's tested at. So we should be seeing no more should we be seeing these no power limits boards feeding the CPU whatever they want in terms of current and all that stuff.
Yep.
So there's the extreme profile, and then there is the performance profile. And this is for K-SKU parts. So there's two profiles, extreme, performance. Now, performance is 125 watts to 253 watts. So I think 253 watts lasts for 56 seconds, and then you go all the way back down to 125 watts, which is, I suppose, the TDP, the thermal design power rating for that particular chip, which is a pretty substantial downgrade when you went from unlimited power indefinitely to 125 watt cap after a turbo period. So quite a big difference there. Anyway, MSI has rolled out their new beta or beta BIOSes, depending on where you are listening from in the world. And their default profile, so what they use out of the box, is the performance profile. So 125 watt / 253 watt. And that's a substantial difference from how MSI was running out of the box. I have done a little bit of testing, but I've actually done all the testing, but I have held off on releasing that data and that video until we get like official BIOSes. Like, what are they doing moving forward? Because I don't want to release that video and say that the K-SKU parts now by default on MSI motherboards after a turbo period run at 125 watts, which substantially decreases all core performance, like substantially compared to the power unlimited stuff. So yeah, pretty wild stuff there. But I want to see what all of the brands do, and I want to see after maybe another BIOS update when they get out of the beta or beta phase, what we end up with there. So I'm holding fire for the moment, but I do have a lot of data. It'll probably be straight after Computex that I will look at what all the BIOS revisions are doing, and then do some sort of updated testing. So we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, interesting story that I think is still developing.
Yeah, it seems like Intel, there's still a few things that they need to clarify, or maybe they're still intentionally being a bit vague on. So, for example, they're claiming that there's baseline performance and extreme profiles, but they're still saying things like, well, it depends on the board as to whether the board vendor should set the extreme or the performance profile as the default, and that could depend on VRM quality and other factors, which is still like clarifying what the profiles are is a good step forward. So they have released what they've made in statements to various different outlets what they expect these profiles to be, what the various different settings and limits should be for those configurations, where previously no one knew. That was just information that wasn't available for people. So it's good that they're moving towards having that information available in some way, but they're still yet to, I guess, release their final determination from their power spec issue. From, they were saying they'd come up with some sort of final statement, I guess.
It's all still very shady, and I don't like it. So
yeah,
I'm testing on the Z790, an MSI motherboard, the Carbon Wi-Fi. I think it might have been Carbon Max Wi-Fi. So it's quite a decent board. It's not a budget board. It's not an entry level.
It's like a $400 board, isn't it? The Carbon series.
You could look it up. It's a good board. It is a good board. So Intel's saying, depending on the motherboard's power delivery, they will either opt with K-SKU parts, which again doesn't make sense anyway, but they'll either opt for performance or extreme. But that goes nowhere in addressing the problem the entire ecosystem has, because you can buy hundreds of LGA 1700 boards that don't have the VRM capabilities to drive a 1300K or even a 1200K, certainly not a 1400K, at the performance profile. Like they can't sustain 125 watts. So some of them can't even sustain 90 watts. So it doesn't help in that instance where you can buy And again, we're not talking about B series boards. We're talking about entry level Z690 and Z790 motherboards that can't drive Core i9 processors at these new specifications. And then that's one end of the problem. But then at the other end, the more extreme end, so let's say that there's going to be a mixture of high-end boards that run the performance profile or the extreme profile out of the box. How does someone know which boards do that and which don't? And that's obviously, well, Intel's saying that's determined on the power delivery capabilities of the individual boards. But where's that segmentation? Like, are you buying a Z790 extreme board or a Z790 performance board? And then can the performance boards run the extreme profile? Because previously they were running without power limits, and maybe that was leading to stability issues. But so they've gone from running at 400 watts, but now they can only sustain 125 watts. So it's all, I've tested a lot of these boards. A lot of them would run without power limits at well under 100 degrees. So they should all be extreme boards, but the carbon's not. So again, minefield, not exactly sure what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking it up. The Carbon Wi-Fi is the third highest motherboard in MSI's Z790 series. Only the Ace and the Godlike are above it. And it is a $400 board.
Yeah,
so
wow.
the fact that it is configured to use the inadequate performance profile, considering it could previously run extreme or power unlimited, is, a bit weird, especially because, the CPU is degrading. Yes, that is somewhat on the board vendors for setting those power profiles too high. But if the board can do it, then the board should be configured to the highest spec that Intel is saying is in, their little group of specifications that they're allowing. So a Carbon Wi-Fi and all boards that could previously, without any issues, sustain unlimited power, those should all be extreme boards, I would have thought. But it doesn't really solve those problems with the lower tier boards. And, it kind of goes back to like an advertising and marketing standpoint. Like Intel doesn't mandate that board manufacturers say what these profiles are or what the boards are capable of. So there's no, like they say it's a Z790 board, but they don't have to mandate, you have to say this is a performance board or an extreme board or a baseline board or, well, a sub-baseline board, because it sounds like some motherboards don't even reach the baseline profile. So there's no clarity for consumers there. And this isn't an issue just with motherboards. It's been an issue with Intel CPUs as well. The CPU naming schemes are horrendous. Not so bad on the desktop, but on laptops, they are unbelievably terrible. The goal, I guess, with those naming schemes is to minimize the clarity that consumers have so that they buy products that maybe, they're just advertised as a Core i7. You don't know which of the Core i7s it is. It could be a quad core or it could be an 8-core CPU. It doesn't matter though. It's a Core i7, so they can give it the Core i7 premium price point. So all of those things, they advantage Intel, not the customers, as it does with this motherboard situation. The fact that you don't know whether a board is extreme, performance, baseline, worse than baseline. That was the case before all of this stuff started to blow up, where you could buy those low-end boards that were inadequate for the top-tier processors. And now it's the exact same case afterwards, and it's even made worse by the fact that you could see your review and initial testing of something like the Z790 Carbon, where it shows power unlimited specs, but then the board that you actually take off the shelf from Newegg or whatever, updated to the latest BIOS, may be configured to now use the lower performance profile. So this whole generation is basically it's going to end up a mess. Like there's really no way for them to avoid this being a huge mess at the end of the day for consumers.
Yeah, I suppose just to be clear, I should note that you can select, I don't think the extreme profile on the beta BIOS that I have on the board right now, it defaults to the performance profile, but then you can select water cooling or whatever, and that goes to the unlimited profile that was previously the default profile. So the board can still run that, but I guess if you do try and run that and then you run back into the stability problems, and this is the concern I've had all along with this, is so you were running the extreme profile and maybe you're getting crashing, or the unlimited profile rather, or you weren't, whatever the case may be. But the point is now, if you enable what it was doing previously by default and it crashes, well, that's because you're running without power limits, which previously Intel said was in spec behavior and to be expected. But now they can actually blame the motherboard and say, well, the motherboard's power delivery isn't good enough. It has nothing to do with silicon quality or anything like that. Your CPU will need to run at the default performance profile that sees it, largely run at 125 watts for extended all-core workloads, not 300 plus watts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a get out of jail free card for Intel, where people obviously, if you run these CPUs at a sustained 125 watts, they're not going to crash. Like the worst of the worst silicon will do that. So if you end up really unlucky with the silicon lottery, and I'm just speculating here that this is potentially the problem, but I don't know what other explanation there would be. If your CPU is particularly bad, and BuildZoid claims to have a 1400K that's particularly bad, then they can just tell you, well, it's because you're running the wrong profile. Run the default profile or the performance profile, and your stability issues will go away. And they almost certainly will, because that is a very low power target for that particular chip compared to what it was running at.
Yeah, and they won't need to give you an RMA or refund or return, because now they can just say, well, previously you were getting, the performance that we advertised. We originally were showing PL1 equals PL2 performance. That's what was advertised to you. But no, you can't complain that it crashes in that configuration, because actually we've got multiple different profiles, you see. And while we advertised to you the extreme performance profile for the data that you saw to make your purchasing decision, actually performance profile, that's also a legitimate profile. And if you're seeing crashing, that's what you should use. Now, forget the fact that it drastically reduces your performance. That's too bad for you, I guess. Whereas really from a consumer standpoint, if they were doing the right thing, if they had advertised to you extreme profile performance, and that's how all the boards were configured, and then it degraded your CPU because you happen to get, let's say, a bottom 10% 14900K or whatever, and it degraded, if that is what is in fact happening, and then it's no longer stable for you, you can't run in that configuration anymore, then it really should be on Intel to rectify that problem in a way that is satisfactory to the consumer. And I would think that for most consumers, changing to a profile that is much slower, that is still Intel's, validated, acceptable spec, is not doing what the consumer wants, because they bought the CPU for the highest level of performance. That's why you'd buy a 14900K, is for the ultimate performance in games. So yeah, I don't like it from that standpoint. The fact that they can sort of use that to get out of, almost similar to the Asus RMA situation when we're talking about warranty claims. It's almost like a warranty scenario. If your CPU has degraded because you're running in that profile, they should be replacing your CPU so that it can continue to run in that profile as advertised. But with the performance and extreme stuff, I don't know. Don't know how that'll go, but there's the out there for them to use, which I don't like.
Yeah, and there's also the added layer of difficulty with benchmarking. So when the CPU ran at 253 watts, no matter what, or unlimited, pick one, it doesn't really matter. There's very little difference between the two. When that was the case, you could fire up a game, let everything warm up, which is typically what you do with graphics cards and everything, and then you start your benchmark pass. But in a more CPU demanding title, such as Cyberpunk, you really need to make sure that you've been playing the game for an extended period of time to ensure that it's actually running at the power target that it would be running at once you've been playing the game for more than a couple of minutes. And it might even take 5 minutes before you'll see a decline in performance as the CPU winds down, because it's finished with that turbo period. So that can be difficult. And it can be also difficult that if you're running the extreme profile and then you change to the performance profile and you've got an FPS counter up or something like that, and you go to a similar section of the game, you're likely going to see the same or very similar performance and think, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It's stable now. I'm getting pretty much the same performance, so I'm happy. It's more power efficient or whatever. And you can justify it that way. But as the game becomes increasingly demanding, or the tougher sections of the game where you don't want to be dropping performance, that's likely where you will be seeing a much more substantial performance hit, certainly more so than you'd like to see. So it makes all of that much more challenging.
Yeah, let alone which profile you use as the main comparison point to the competitors. Is it what they originally advertised? Is it the new default performance profile? If it's different across different motherboards, that's also brings up various different issues. How do you compare it to the next gen parts? Intel has the opportunity to compare it to a lower performance profile now. So for next generation parts, they could potentially inflate the performance numbers by using a lower profile than they originally advertised. There's just so many angles to this that I see are very messy. None of it is in a way that benefits consumers. Like, this is all not good for consumers. It hasn't been good for consumers for years because we made videos about power spec stuff. I can't remember how long ago. You sent me a link a while back. It was like 6 years ago that you first brought it up. And then we made like an hour-long video 3 years ago or something. Anyway, the whole thing's messy, but hopefully with next generation parts, which is supposed to be a completely different architecture, at least it revamped architecture, new motherboard platform and those sorts of things, they have a chance to make it not as messy. They could do it. Will they? I don't know. But if they're more power efficient, there's the chance that they will.
Well, they won't, because AMD still has the same problem. Like, this has been, as you say, primarily an Intel problem, and the issue is much more significant on Intel platforms because of power consumption. But it's also a problem on the AMD side. We've seen AMD, whether they be AM4 or now we're seeing it with the AM5, motherboards that claim to support CPUs like a Ryzen 9 7950X, but they can't run them at full performance. They throttle them because the power delivery can't deliver enough power for those CPUs to run at their base standard configuration. So that's hugely problematic. And I always hate it when people say, but who's going to put a Ryzen 9 CPU on a cheap motherboard? It's like, well, first of all, that's a very ignorant comment, because pretty much every OEM likes to do that. ODM, they like to white box type PCs. That's what they do, right? You look at a Dell or an HP computer that advertises a Ryzen 9, it's got like a 4-phase VRM on it. So that's just par for the course there. And then you could say, well, don't buy those computers because they're garbage. It's like, okay, well, that solves the problem. But really, that's just all a silly way of looking at it. The problem is companies are selling products to make money, and they're falsely advertising the capabilities of those products. So whether or not you want to put a Ryzen 9 processor on an entry-level B650 motherboard, which I think is pretty reasonable. A lot of people like to min-max, so spending we're talking about $120 US motherboard. Some of them are even $140 US, and they can't come close to running a Ryzen 9 in an all-core workload at its full capability. And people, sort of brush that off as, but who would do that? It's like, no. That's not the point. The point is, if you go to the compatibility page, it lists 170 watt processors as being supported when they're not properly supported. So it's an AMD problem as well, but probably less processors and less motherboards run into the problem. But I don't think that makes it any less of a problem. I think they both need to address that.
Yep, and it's one of those advertising, not doing the right thing for consumers sort of thing. And I feel like the main topics that we'll be talking about today, they're very interwoven into one another. It all comes back to companies. They're doing things for themselves, for profit reasons, for margin reasons, shareholder reasons, not for consumers. So whether it's related to not giving consumers the warranties they're after, or advertising products in a way that is misleading in the best cases, or outright false advertising in the worst cases, these are things that consumers and as reporters, this is what we should be fighting back against, right? Is doing things in a way and encouraging companies to do things in a way that benefits consumers the most, giving people good after support for their product, after purchase support and care for their products, ensuring that they're advertised correctly and that it's clear what you are buying. And whether we're talking Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, ASRock, Intel, or AMD, which are the main companies that we've been talking about in this podcast, all of them have work to do in this front to making sure that the ecosystems that they're providing, the products that they're providing, are offering consumers the best possible process. But, they're all publicly traded companies, so the incentive there isn't towards consumer friendliness necessarily, but their main obligations are to shareholders. And this is why, when we talk about these sort of issues, we always have to bring up these disclaimers of, when we're talking about, let's say, Intel power problems, it doesn't mean that those problems are exclusive to Intel and that the decisions that they're making are Intel-only problems.
Mm-hmm.
Most companies, and we can include NVIDIA in that, even though we're not really talking about GPUs, but of the main companies that we usually talk about, their incentives are for shareholders, and they will make decisions that do not necessarily benefit consumers in the best possible light, let's say.
Yep, which is why defending any of these companies is super duper dumb, should not be done.
Yep.
And yeah, that's a frustrating angle for sure. There's no need to defend Intel or AMD about this, and there's no point to deflect and blame motherboard manufacturers because, look, you can blame the motherboard manufacturers if you want, but also blame AMD and Intel because ultimately they are responsible for their platform, their ecosystem. They put their logo on the box. They're using that to help sell you the product. They should be certifying these products for use with their processors. And they're as much to blame for the false advertising as the board partners are. And really, again, it's like the power spec thing. If Intel and AMD are saying, look, if the CPU fits in the socket and it powers up, that's compatible. You can put that on your compatibility page. If that's the extent of their guidelines, then it's on them. And again, it's on them anyway, because AMD should be saying, for us to certify your board to support Ryzen 9 processors, this is the criteria you need to meet. They then need to test that board before they'll A, sell them chipsets for that board, and B, put their logo on that product box. And until they've met that criteria, then they shouldn't be able to do that. So the Ryzen 9 should pass all of their internal testing on that board to get Ryzen 9 certification. And if it doesn't, then it's a Ryzen 7 and down only board or a Ryzen 5 board. If that's how they want to do it. They either allow those boards to be produced and limit the compatibility, or they don't allow them to be produced at all. Realistically, it needs to be one of those two things.
Yeah, I guess that probably wraps up that topic. It's probably time to take a break, and then we've got some boring live. All right, boring lifetime, Steve. What has been happening in your life over the last couple of weeks?
Well, apart from suffering from non-stop headaches that I've now passed on to Balin, very generous of me, I know, I finished the monitor stand build. So I guess it's not really personal life stuff. It's more work stuff. But, you know, we didn't advertise our personal lives to be exciting, did we, with this boring life segment?
No, you did make a video on that, though, so I feel like that counts more of work than usual.
All right, you're making this hard for me, Tim. Well, I haven't done too much of anything, to be honest. I'm trying to think. Not really. I do not want to talk about football, please.
Why not?
No, I don't.
What happened on the weekend, Steve?
No, we can skip that segment. Oh, mate, I made it to, it was the second week in a row where I got to like the end of the first quarter and I'm like, this is too painful to watch. So
did you watch the whole match?
I did, but I always start very optimistic. I get my big TV, my couch, I sit there all comfortable and I'm pumped. Like I get way too excited for the start of the game. And the last 2 weeks, the start of the game has been horrific. Last week, admittedly, wasn't as bad as the week before against Carlton, but again, we don't need to talk about that either. And I got to the end of the first quarter, and it was just so frustrating to watch. So I came out to the studio, I put it on my streaming PC, and I played some video games. And I don't know, I just played video games angrily for a few hours. So that sucked. So we'll skip past that. I won't let Tim drag me back there.
Well, I mean, your experience watching Melbourne in that game, and I watched parts of that game, and they were bad.
Thank you.
Very similar to watching Adelaide for the last 7 years.
Okay.
Just frustrating performance after frustrating performance. I mean, Adelaide lost their match in the dying minutes again.
I did watch that game, yeah.
About 20th time in the last couple of years. So that was frustrating. But yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I mean,
losing to West Coast. Oof. That said, Adelaide play West Coast this week.
Yeah. So. I guess just we go into it with different expectations. But as I said, we don't need to talk about it any further, so we'll swiftly move along.
Who did Melbourne play this week? You're playing
St Kilda, I think, on Sunday.
So St Kilda are rubbish. So if you got to be winning that at the MCG on Sunday.
Yes. Well, hopefully well, we will have a podcast next week, won't we? Because we won't have left for Computex. So
Not yet.
you're no doubt going to bring that up. So that's something to look forward to. But
That's
yeah,
right.
haven't.
All you got to do is find a forward line somewhere, get some forwards from somewhere. Don't know.
But yeah, haven't mowed the lawns. I need to. It's very long, but it's been quite damp. So
yep, same here.
I think we're getting a couple of decent weather windows over the weekend. So I might be maybe before the game, I'll mow the lawns. That's a pretty typical Australian Sunday, isn't it, Tim? Mow the lawns and watch the footy.
Nice.
Might have a VB as well. Try one of those. Yeah, nah, I was kidding. But yeah, no, I don't think I've done too much. So I did help Balin out with his car, but I don't know if we really want to. You hate car stuff, so I probably won't tell that story. Yeah, no, I've got nothing. You can tell me about your boring life.
Well, my boring life involves having been sick, so it's a pretty similar story to you in terms of what's been happening. Watching the football, getting disappointed, being sick, coughing a lot, those sorts of things. I did enjoy taking a week off a little while ago, as we mentioned at the start of this episode. That was good. That was quite refreshing to not focus on work for just a little bit. And I was sick for a couple of days there, but yeah, the rest of it, just taking some time off and refreshing myself, that was good. I felt pretty good, a bit more motivated for the videos I was making the following week. So yeah, maybe I need to take a few more breaks throughout the year and not just
don't know about that,
wait an entire year before taking any time off. But so my takeaway from that is time off might actually be good and make me more productive for the weeks that follow.
Yeah, I think it just makes you weak, honestly. That's what I reckon.
How many holidays and stuff have you taken this year? Fishing?
This year?
You went fishing?
Oh, yeah, I went fishing. What else did I do? I took a week off for fishing, week and a half. And I think that's all I've done this year. And that's all I plan on doing.
Well, the second half of this year is going to be busy, fingers crossed.
Now, Balin just went on a holiday, but I wasn't involved in that. I had to actually do work because Balin wasn't here, so that was tough.
You weren't invited on his holiday?
No. Nah, I tried to get in on it, but no. Well, Balin got engaged on his holiday, so, you know.
Oh, yeah, congratulations to him.
I might have spoilt that moment if I was there. It's hard to say. I like to think I would have enhanced it.
Yeah, you could have third wheeled their engagement. That would have been nice.
Yeah, I reckon I could have too. But yeah, so Balin's engaged now, so that's exciting for I guess Balin and he's I won't say anything negative. I was going to tease JB, but no, JB's very lucky to have Balin. I'm being positive. See. Balin's just over there. He's not throwing anything at me yet. So
hopefully they don't listen to this podcast.
I'm sure they've got
with your ideas.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got better things to do. But no, I didn't get in on that action and make it I don't know, more enjoyable. Balin was very nervous, he said. And the one little side story. So he had the ring in the bottom of his bag because they went over to Bali to do it there for their holiday over there because it's a sort of a family tradition thing. So Balin was very nervous about the ring and hiding that and, you know, keeping it a secret from JB. Put it in the bottom of his backpack. And then when he had to go through security, Balin, because he suspected that, you know, the ring may be pulled out of the bag or whatever, while it's being scanned. So he said to JB, you go in the other line and I'll go in this line. And so that sort of worked out. And then JB went over there and I can't remember, something happened, but she came back to Balin and Balin's like freaked out and almost yelled at her. He's like, go away, type thing. So she's like, what the hell's wrong with you? So she's gone over to the other line and then Balin's lining up. And as she's walking off, this security woman has pulled the ring out and gone, oh, you're getting married, are you? And JB's looked over like, what? And Balin has obviously gone white as a ghost and is furious. And he's just blankly looked at her, grabbed the ring and chucked it in the bottom of the bag. And JB said to him, oh, why did she say, are you getting married? And Balin's like, oh, I think because I talked to you quite poorly. So she was like being a smart ass. And she's like, oh, okay. And then they went off and Balin was so pissed off. Who does that though, right? Who finds a hidden ring and then in front of their girlfriend says that when they're going on holidays? But anyway, so that...
And this was at the security scanners at the airport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't they only supposed to pull out bombs and guns and stuff? Why are they pulling out that stuff?
I guess you take, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you take a lot of stuff out of the bags, right? I mean, it depends on the type of scanner. I know they've got more modern scanners now that don't have to do that. I don't know. I don't know the story, but basically, when we go, we take our laptop out, our wallet, you put all that crap in the tray, and maybe because it was metal. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's what she said right in front of Balin's girlfriend as they're going on a holiday, and he's trying to hide the ring. Like, how dumb can you be? That's, I guess, I'm living vicariously through Balin. If you can't tell, I tried very hard to get on this holiday and didn't succeed. Right. So now I'm telling you about the stories. But anyway, he got through there, proposed to her. She said yes, and now they're engaged, and she's all very happy, and Balin's happy, and I'm at home hearing about it through a Skype call.
Nice. Well, I'm still happy to torch the wonderful people that work at the airport, specifically in the security department.
Tim, we are flying in like a week.
They won't listen to this. No, to be fair, I will qualify this statement by saying the airport security staff, specifically at the United States, they are terrible.
Yeah, stuff the US. Yeah, stuff those guys. I don't know what they're doing. I have no.
In Australia, not as bad.
Yeah, Australia is lovely, wonderful people. They do a great job. So please don't.
Yep.
When I go through with my extremely suspicious bag, that's full of wires and stuff. If we told that story that year where we smuggled on the ITX systems in our carry-on, did we ever tell that story on the podcast? I feel like I might have.
Well, hang on. You can't get stuck into me for criticizing people that work in airport security and then use the word smuggle as if we've committed a crime to bring those computers on the plane to Computex.
I suspect
that wasn't a crime. That was just avoiding their carry-on requirements.
Well, if that's not a crime, I'm happy to go with it. No, well, to be fair, because I did fly business, so I had more of a carry-on limit, which we would have been within my limit, but I already had my own carry-on and didn't want to deal with two separate bags. And look, it was fine. Like, we weren't breaking any crazy rules or laws or whatever. Like, we weren't going to exceed the weight of the plane and have it crash into some body of water. No. If we did, though, it was definitely Tim's fault. So just putting that out there. But no, we built 2 mini ITX PCs on the Harbour Unboxed main channel that we intended to take over because laptops suck. Sorry, Jared. And the idea was that Tim would take one of them for his carry-on and I would take the other one for my carry-on because they were very compact but very heavy. And they had a ton of, wires and everything because they're desktop PCs. This may sound like a dumb idea, but believe me, it was an awesome idea. They worked extremely well. Jared came in with his laptop that sounded like a hovercraft, and we were encoding videos 4 times faster, and Jared's like, damn it, screw these laptops. I've got to build one of these ITX systems next time. We don't take ITX systems anymore. We have the computers supplied by the sponsors because, we have like 1 million subscribers now, so it's not a big deal. But getting back to the story.
This just gets worse and worse.
Yeah, I like digging holes. Tim rocks up to the airport and I'm looked at him, I'm like, that's a good suitcase, Tim. He's like, thanks. Where's your carry-on bag that I've got to give you this computer? Because I'm just holding the computer in the airport because I had my carry-on bag that was just big enough to fit all my stuff. And it was within the weight. And Tim's like, oh, yeah, about that. Forgot to bring a carry-on bag. So we had to go.
I honestly had forgot that we were bringing the ITX systems as carry-on.
So this is what I'm dealing with, people. I just want to set the scene here. Not only did I organize to build the computers and had Tim come and build them all. So I did all the organization. I then finished building the computers off stream and got all of our storage and data on them. And then I brought them to the airport. Tim's one job was to bring a bag. So here we were having to buy a bag, and let me tell you, bags at the airport is not where you want to buy a travel bag because they are not cheap. We ended up spending like $150 on this bag that could carry the weight, and we put both computers in the bag with all the cables, and how heavy do you reckon it was?
I think each PC was maybe 8 kilos, maybe?
Yeah, it was more than a bag of cement for sure. So
yeah, the bag itself with both of them, because I think that in the end we took both PCs onto the plane in the one bag.
Yeah, because that was easier.
Which by itself, it was kind of like combining our two carry-on allowances. It would have been the limit or close to the limit, but because they were all in the one bag and you took them on, you were basically massively over the limit, and then I would have been well under the limit. So it all worked out, but it wasn't ideal.
Yeah, that's right. Combined, we had more than enough weight, but it was separated between my business class ticket and your premium economy ticket. Anywho, we chucked it all in the one bag because it was going to be easier, and we thought we'll just take the one bag on. So anyway, I've loaded the bag up and I've said, Tim, pick this up. When you walk onto the plane, just act casual. Just carry the bag like it's weightless, no dramas. I can't do this for the podcast, but Tim has picked the bag up. His arm has just gone stiff as a board and just slammed into his leg. And he's like limping, like he's pulling a gigantic stone. And I'm like, walk naturally, Tim. He's like, I'm trying to. It's damn heavy. And so Tim couldn't carry the bag. So then I had to drag my like 40-kilogram suitcase and carry this bag. It was so funny. Anyway, we got through fine. It was no dramas.
Well, hang on. What bag were you planning on putting it in? Because we ended up putting them both in the same bag, but why didn't you put one of them in your bag?
Because I had my laptop and one of the PCs in my backpack.
Right. Was I supposed to bring
a backpack?
Something to carry both of them in the one thing?
No, I think I didn't, because I didn't want to take two bags for my carry-on. I can't remember. There was a specific, this is going back 5 years, mind you, something like that. So I don't remember the exact details. All I remember was we came to the conclusion that it would be easier for me to keep my carry-on with my laptop and the camera gear in my backpack. And it would be easier to take, because my backpack was like stuffed. I couldn't use it basically, but I was like, that's how we're going to have to do this. And then when we thought, well, we've paid $150 for this bigger bag, let's just put everything in that. I think it was something along those lines. And you were meant to make it look like it wasn't very heavy, and that was not an option.
It was pretty difficult.
Yeah.
It was pretty difficult.
So anyway, I had to pick it up and carry it. And I got it through just fine. And the plane got there safely and our computers worked. But every time I put it down, it looked very suspicious, this bag. Like it was a B word shaped kind of bag. It was heavy. It was lots of 2 steel cases in it with wires and stuff. And it was very heavy. So every time I picked it up, it just looked weird. And we kept like leaving it in places when we like got food and stuff. And it was just, anyway. Yeah, it probably didn't look as dodgy as we thought it looked, I suppose, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those situations where airport security that I just trashed earlier, they've seen those sorts of things before, and they're just like, oh, that's no big deal. But we're just walking around being like, oh, can we bring on 2 computers onto a plane? Like, is that allowed? Like, can you put those things through security? Turns out, like, yeah, easily. There was no problems whatsoever at any stage of what we did.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
for us, it felt a bit weird.
It felt a bit. To be fair, though, we do get a few odd looks when I take a suitcase full of like XLR cables, audio recorders.
Yeah, they're not a fan of bringing a lot of batteries. So if you have like a backpack and you've got like, I don't know, let's say we bring on 8 to 10 batteries for cameras and stuff, which you have to bring in your carry-on because they don't allow you to put them
we have a lot
under the plane in the main storage. You got a lot of batteries in your backpack. It looks kind of weird to have those batteries in there. Like, who does that?
But when it goes through the scanner, when my camera bag / electronics bag goes through the scanner, it just looks like a bird's nest of electronic goods. Like we usually take 3 audio recorders. So we take 2 that we use and a backup recorder. Yeah, I take backup of everything because we don't want to have, something go wrong and then we lose time over there. It's sort of go, go, go. You can't afford to have any malfunctions or failures. So just the amount of crap we take is insane. And it's usually crammed into one densely packed electronics bag. And on their scanners, it looks interesting.
Yeah.
It looks unusual. So anyway, that was a story.
Well, do you want to know why? Because this is kind of related to talking about putting things in backpacks. Do you want to know why I don't like the United States, their
Tell me.
security people all that much?
I'm not going there
So-
anytime soon, so tell me, Tim.
Well, one time I was traveling there for something. I can't remember what it was. And I had a very short connection in the US. I think I was at LAX, one of the busiest airports in America. And I had like an hour and a half or 2 hour connection from an international flight to a domestic flight, which really isn't long enough at that airport to do it. But if the planes are all on time and everything, it's doable. So I think I landed from Australia like maybe 20 minutes late. So that had cut my connection down. I really had to like power through all the security and stuff to get to this connecting flight. And so I had taken a camera with a couple of batteries and stuff. Nothing like the Computex scenario, just a camera, a few batteries, that's it. Wasn't even really planning to use it, just took it in case.
So more typical travel type stuff.
Typical travel stuff. I got to the airport and it was like this row of scanner, like, at a typical airport, there's multiple different scanning aisles. The first issue was lots of people, but not enough aisles open. There might have been 2 aisles open out of 8 or 10 there. Lots of people, like heaps of people. Second issue, I get to the scanning section and this person in front of me has been the genius idea to take packets of what they claimed was salt in their carry-on, which I don't know if you know what salt in a bag looks like, kind of looks like drugs. So lo and behold, the TSA person who's right there stops this person and is pulling out like, I don't know, this guy must have taken 10, 12 large bags of claimed salt.
So it's a salt
Could have been
collector.
anything.
Yep.
Could have been anything. It made little to no sense why this person had all this salt in their carry-on. Anyway, the issue that I had was this TSA person was taking forever to deal with this person. Like each individual bag bringing out, what's this? It's like, they're all the same bag, mate. Take them to the probing section out the back where you search them or whatever. Let me through. And then, of course, because I'd taken batteries and stuff, then I got checked for no reason. They're having to take everything out of my bag, which I'd very nicely packed, ask about every single item that's in there, even if it's like unrelated, completely unrelated
Tim's
to why
like,
they stopped
these are
me.
just my bath salts. What's the problem?
Well, they ask about stuff like, I might have had like a jumper in there because I was wearing a T-shirt from Australia. Go to the US, you need a jumper. I had a jumper. They're like, what's this? I'm like,
That's
are you
suspicious.
serious?
That's suspicious.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's clothes. And they'd bring out something like, that's a pen. Like, come on. You just seriously asking me about all this stuff's never happened in any other country. Maybe it's just that one person. But every time I've flown to the US, there's been those sorts of things happening. So I did make my connecting flight just by like a minute or so. And I had to like run through this massive airport and stuff. I do partially blame the guy that thought that bringing the salt through the security scanners was a good idea, because it definitely wasn't. But anyway,
Yeah, he's got something to answer for there for sure.
Maybe it's different now. I haven't been to the US since, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, but it used to be every time just very slow, taking time, asking lots of pointless and stupid questions. So yeah, anyway.
But the Australian border, they're great people. Love them all. I'm looking forward to seeing them in a little over a week from now. That'll be good. So
100%.
Hope
Yeah.
they enjoy my electronics bag and everything goes smoothly. And the same for the Taiwanese people. Lovely people, great at security.
Taiwan's always great. There's never any issues there.
Taiwan is great.
That said, in Melbourne now, they do have the new type of scanner where you don't need to take your laptop and stuff out of the bag. You just put the whole bag in.
Have they got that for all of them now? Because I'm looking forward to that. I thought maybe only a couple. To be fair, I haven't gone through the airport since we went to Taiwan this time last year. So, yeah. Yeah. They definitely have them in the domestic section. So, okay.
Don't know. We'll see what it's like, but at least that was better than what it's been previously. Anyway, too much talk about airport security. We'll end this podcast for episode 32. That's it for all of our random topics and stuff. And yes, we'll have, hopefully, neither of us will get sick. Well, it'd actually be quite bad if we got sick at this point, because in a couple of weeks, we're supposed to be overseas. So we'll be back next week for our podcast, fingers crossed. And then, Computex the following week. So hopefully we'll have some sort of podcast thing from there. Not sure what we'll be doing there. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's planned, so it's all busy that week. But yes, Computex is coming up and there should be some exciting announcements. So yeah, as I said, that's it for this episode. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video version, it's on the Hardware Unboxed podcast on YouTube. We've got audio feeds as well if you just want the audio version. And yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.